that 55 rule that I was talking about, it's the birth year, okay? So let's say your birthday's in November, all right? That January, you're able to access your TSP, okay, before 55. So I just wanted to clarify. I made it sound like you had to be 55 or on your 50. It's within your 55th birth year, okay? So I didn't want anyone thinking, oh man, I'm in December, I'm screwed, right? That doesn't help me too much, all right? So I just wanted to clarify that, all right? The year of your birth. It's crazy how one way I say something can make a huge difference, okay? Right. More on the CARES Act. Employer plans are allowed to double their loan provision from 50% of the vested account balance, okay? Other temporary changes have been made to charitable donations, stimulus plans, health care, and student loans, okay? I'm sure you've seen probably some of those other ones on the news. That's been. Here are the risks of all the funds so you don't sue us, all right? Now let's get into the life cycle funds, because I keep saying, hey, I like the life cycle funds, but why? You can see they have a fund for every 5 years. We're in basically the 2025 era now, I would say, if you're pre-retirement, if you're going to retire within the next 5 years or so, and you're in the life cycle funds, this is most likely around here where you're probably sitting, okay? The way life cycle funds work is they're very simple. They're risky at the beginning of your career, and as you progress throughout your career, as you get closer to these years, they start to become more conservative. They rebalance, they reallocate based on your timeline for retirement. When I first started and got my 401k right out of college, right, I was again, rushing with all this investment knowledge, trying to make all these decisions because I'm at an investment firm. Guess what? We have a lot of options. So I was thrilled, young investor. All right, let's pick the perfect 401k plan. So what I did is because we have so many options, I picked all these different buckets, all these funds, American funds, Vanguard, BlackRock. I was picking all these aggressive funds. I probably had like 17 different funds, okay? I get my first statement, there's like $20 worth of fees, okay? Like, man, I didn't even make 20 bucks. I don't even know if I put 20 bucks in there, all right? And now that doesn't apply to you guys because TSP is very cheap, but what I realized was I can do the same exact thing, get the same exposure to the market in a target date fund. For me, it's a target date fund, but for you guys, it's a life cycle fund. So that's where my money is. I know for a fact that's where some of Chris's money is as well, okay? Because they do it for us. And in some cases, we're too busy managing other people's money. We don't have time to focus on ourselves, all right? So I know they're on top of it every quarter, making sure I'm risky, okay? And because I'm a little bit of a risk taker, what I've been doing is every year a new fund has come out where it's 2060, now we're at 2065, I've pushed myself to the next block. So when 2070 comes out, I'm going to push myself again, okay? Because of, again, the aggression, that's my timeline, all right? As you folks get closer to retirement, we might want to make sure, hey, we still need some exposure. I think, here we go, will show us, right? Even folks that are getting ready to retire within the next 5 years, they still have 25% of their assets in C fund. Because remember, if you have $1 million in your TSP, are you going to need the whole million the day you retire? Unless you're buying that Lamborghini or whatever your heart desires, okay? Other than that, I find it rare that you would need your $1 million day one of retirement, all right? So that's even why you see in the life cycle fund, I mean, look, even in the income fund, they still have over almost a 12% allocation to the C fund, all right? So what that's saying is, hey, even when I'm taking income from this account, these funds, I need to have some exposure to the risky stuff to keep a portion of my portfolio geared towards growth, because there is still that future. Even in retirement, we're still planning for the future. All right, and then you can see, obviously, if you're in the 2060 or 2065 fund, you have pretty much, 99% of your portfolio in CS&I, all right? It's the riskiest stuff, all right? It goes on through there. If someone is in the 2050 fund, I like showing this just so you can see over the course of the years. So if they started in 2010, that's when they got into the fund, first hired by the government, and then worked a 40-year career, God bless them, they would go from 3.3% in the G fund to 74% by the time they were finished. okay? They didn't do anything special. They didn't do anything. They just put their money in the life cycle fund, and TSP managers took care of this for you, all right? Something to keep in mind, set it, let it, forget it. It's a pretty good way to invest, at least a simple way to invest. Set it, let it, forget it. It's the best way to give yourself the discipline if we don't have the discipline, like myself sometimes, right? And then I'm not going to go through every one of these because it's based on obviously years born, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It's based on your birthday, your age, your timeline for retirement, but your tolerance for risk could be different than what this age band is saying, all right? So just take into account the percentages based on where things are allocated to during those different life cycle funds, all right? But again, this is the same for every single one, so I'm not going to dive into every single 5 years of the life cycle funds. But you can kind of see, get a note for, okay, hey, based on my birthday, this is probably where I fall, okay? Just generally speaking. You then should do a self-assessment to say, okay, am I a little bit less risky, a little bit more risky than what this is showing? Because as time passes, investment values vary with financial markets, okay? This can cause your portfolio to shift from your desired allocation. This is where I kind of jumped ahead of myself and talked about rebalancing, the importance of you guys rebalancing your funds. Like I said, if you don't do that now on your own, this is the life cycle funds we're talking about. They do it for you, all right? So again, I use that 50-50 portfolio. In this case, as stock prices rise, that allocation may change from 70% to 30%. And then, of course, if you feel that you are more at risk than what you originally intended, you should rebalance, reallocate. This allows us to practice the forced discipline of selling high, buying low, when unfortunately the average investor does the opposite. I think we took that, we did. We took that slide out, probably because we had to update the numbers, but even though it's 5 years old, what we found out is that the average investor returns about 2.3%. All right, so average return per year, you and me sitting in this room, we return 2.3%. The S&P 500 does 7.27% averages, okay? Why is that? Why are we, the average investor, getting almost 5% less than the S&P 500? Remember when I said, set it, let it, forget it. If we leave it in there for 20 years, it does a pretty good job. It's because we try to pick and choose. Oh, market's going down, pull out our money. Oh, market's going back up, put it back in. So what people actually end up doing is they're chasing their tail. The market's already down. Why are we pulling it out? You weren't the what is it, Bill Ackman or whoever that guy is that's trying to, the hedge fund manager that always tries to time the market, okay? People usually buy high and sell low, yes. To TSP, no. You have to have earned income, unless you have earned income. So, but that would have to be to an IRA at that point. I'm assuming you've already separated from service here at the government, correct? So you can make contributions, you just have to have earned income, okay? Not to a TSP, to an IRA, all right? So again, that comes back to a little bit of the emotions there, is that we try to pick and choose the timing of the market, and because of that, we're being the average investor, we usually get it wrong. Just more times we get it wrong than we get it right. So that's why, again, the Warren Buffett approach, our approach, buy, hold for value, okay? Don't transpire or move from the plan based on all the craziness going out. What goes down usually comes back up. All right. So we have the Roth TSP and the traditional TSP. Traditional TSP is pre-tax. Taxes are deferred, so less money is taken out of your paycheck. Transfers are allowed, so eligible employer rollovers and eligible employer plans. If you had an outside 401k from a different job, you can roll it over into the TSP. When you retire, you can roll the TSP to an outside private IRA or something like that. However, they are taxable when withdrawn, right? Half dozen to one, half dozen to another. We either got to pay taxes now or pay taxes later, all right? Which brings us to Roth TSP, which would be us paying taxes now. It's after tax, so taxes are paid up front, so you're taking a little bit more hit to your paycheck because you're paying taxes on that money putting into the account, Same transfer rules apply. You can roll over, interchange transfer rules. However, the Roth account has tax-free earnings and tax-free withdrawals as long as 5 years have passed since the opening of the account. Okay, and of course there is a age limit, 59 and a half, all right, to make sure there's no early withdrawal penalty. But all the money and the gains taken out of this account comes out tax-free, purely. So if you pick the world's best penny stock and you turn $1 into $1 million, you're not going to pay taxes on any of that gain, okay, as long as it's in the Roth account, okay? So the biggest question that we get and have been getting for a couple of years now is which one is better, all right? I don't know. I definitely am not, because of all the disclaimers, right? I can't tell you that. But we can walk through a few variables that because of situations, one might be better than the other. Because what we don't have control over are 4 variables. Current tax rate, the future tax rate, which let me ask you guys this. Raise of hands, how many people think taxes will get cheaper in the next 10 years? Well, that was an overwhelming answer, huh? We're laughing, all right? Okay, and just so you know, by God, it felt good to ask that, by the way. It's the first time I got to actually ask that question. I usually been like making a joke in my Zoom presentation, all right? That's usually the answer almost every class gives me when I ask that, is they either laugh or a show of hands, no one raises their hand, okay? Because everyone assumes or thinks taxes will be more expensive, okay? So let's hold on to that. That's what we think. But again, we can't predict future tax rate. Time until funds are needed, maybe we can have a little bit of control over that. We control when we retire, okay, maybe. Rate of return, still choosing your funds you might have a little bit of a control over, but at the end of the day, we're still at the beck and call of the market, right? And then Social Security and Medicare, we definitely don't have any control over. So assume a 45-year-old wants to decide to invest in a Roth or traditional. This person's going to put $10,000 into a Roth TSP every year. So he will pay taxes on that contribution at 25%. So this person, so really what they're doing is putting $12,500 a year into an investment account. Because this is a Roth, it's going to get taxed first. Okay, so they pay the taxes and only $10,000 goes in. Because this is traditional, hey, I'm putting $12,500 in, that's what goes in. I don't have Uncle Sam's sticky fingers touching it first. So obviously, if there's less money going in over the same time period, this account's going to be less than the traditional, all right? However, it's the tax implication that matters. That makes one better than the other. 5% withdrawal with no taxes is about $16,500 a year. 5% withdrawal with federal taxes, okay? So they can 5% of almost $415,000 is about $20,000 a year. So if they have a 25% tax bracket, you can see obviously the Roth makes a little bit more sense. If they have a 15% tax bracket, we obviously see the traditional makes a heck of a lot more sense, okay? I don't know where you guys are going to fall. In fact, it might flip-flop between years, between administrations, right? I mean, it's usually taxes going up or taxes going down. That's something we always hear. So it could be even possible that one year, Roth makes sense. I'd say right now, because we've been saying a lot, taxes are cheap, right? Historically speaking, if you look back over the course of history and where tax rates have been, we are sitting in a historically cheap tax environment. Just a fact. Taxes it's been very rare that taxes have been this cheap in the past. So, and what did my whole class just tell me, Patrick? I don't think taxes are going to get any cheaper moving forward. Okay, then taxes are cheap. Getting our money through the sifter now while we're in a low tax environment. I can be factual with that because I know the tax code as we speak. 4 years ago or so, my father's an accountant, so fair warning, we didn't know the rules, okay? And so it took them a while, obviously, to figure out what the changes were going to be and how to apply them. But my point is that tax code, tax law has consistently changed and is going to change, okay? So why the wealthy, essentially, because I know, and not to get political or anything like that, but a big thing that's come out is, we need to tax the wealthy, right? To tax the wealthy more, maybe we'll get more taxes. What people forget is that when we raise taxes on the wealthy, we're raising taxes on the middle class. This happens, it's just historical, okay? And so why the wealthy don't really care if taxes get raised or not, it's because they have pivot plays. They have things like this set up where, hey, you're going to make my taxes 50%? Fine, I'm not touching that pocket of money for at least 10 years or however long I have to wait. They have maneuvers to get around that, okay? So this is part of the reason, like I said, we can set up our money like the wealthy people. We just got to know how to use it and how to use those pivot plays, right? This is one of those. So I'm not going to say, you, sir, should put all your money in traditional and you, ma'am, should put all your money in Roth. I'm going to say, based on your situation, you've got to have an idea of where you might fall for taxes. And if we know taxes are cheap now, we don't think they're going to get any cheaper later, it stands a good argument. Now there's a possibility, right, if we're sitting in a historical low tax environment now, what if 20, 30 years from now we're in the same environment? So yeah, then traditional makes sense, right? So my point is it's good to have a little bit of both. Because at the end of the day, I don't know, you don't know, we don't know. Because of a lot of uncontrollable factors. But based on these situations, we can clearly as day point, white and black, here's what's going on, right? Here's the best choice based on that situation, okay? But again, the biggest argument for Roths right now is historics, because it's cheaper than it's been before. If I can pay my taxes now cheaper than they were before, I feel that's a fair deal. That's just me. We're not going to get away from paying taxes. Hate to break that to you, but we're still got to pay taxes somewhere, somehow. Half dozen of one, half dozen of the other, right? See, it says the year in which, sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's okay. I realize at age 70, you're required to take a percentage out. Is there a downfall if all of my stuff is traditional because that was all that was available at the time? I retire. Is there a downfall of starting a Roth? And if I don't need the money that I'm taking out of my traditional, am I allowed to put it into a Roth?
Sure am. Sure are. I'm sorry. Sure are. That's a good pivot play. And what you ran into is what people, in most cases, when they're forced to take RMDs, keyword, right, forced, so they don't need the income. It's just because the government said, hey, look, you got a few gray hairs pulling up. I think it's time for you to get taxes. I want my money. Uncle Sam wants his money. So where most people do is, and that's part of the strategy we kind of come up with people is, hey, we need to, I call it recycling the money. We've got to recycle this because you don't need it. It's just the government telling you to put it through the tax sifter. So really what's our plan with that? And in most cases, it's just a transfer of you pay the tax and you put it in the Roth. So you're absolutely able to do that. That's a good question, or good confirmation, good conversation, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So yeah, if you're forced to take RMDs, which you will be, all right, and you don't actually need the income, and that's, we're talking 70 and a half now, 72 actually is what they just changed it to. But, so we have time for you guys sitting here, but that is something that most folks walk into is, okay, I retire, now I got to worry about RMDs, all right? And do I even need to take them? And if I don't need the money, then what do I do with that? Because unless you just want to spend it, okay? Sometimes that's the fun part about retirement, all right? So again, you can see in the year in which you turn 55. Got to rephrase that. The year in which you turn 55 or older and you separate and retire from the government, there is no 10% penalty, okay? I already hammered you guys with that already, so I don't need to go through that. Partial withdrawals. You're allowed to take 4 age-based and service withdrawals per calendar year. That used to be 1. There's a few rule changes that started this year, so we're thrilled about it. It helps you guys. So again, you're allowed to take 4 age-based and service withdrawals. Taking an in-service withdrawal will not prevent you from taking partial withdrawals. That used to be a rule, okay? A lot of silly rules. Once separated, there will be no limit on the number of partial withdrawals you can request. You are limited to 1 partial withdrawal every 30 days, so once a month, all right? You can take a partial withdrawal while in receipt of monthly, quarterly installment payments. And this last one, just based on what we just talked about, right? The TSP, Roth TSP, traditional TSP. They just came out with this rule. It's end of 2019, finally went into effect this year. You'll be able to choose whether your partial withdrawal comes from traditional TSP or Roth TSP. They just came out with that rule. Now, what did we just talk about? The importance of being able to choose where it comes from and when. So prior to, and I can't believe prior to the start of this year, if you had a TSP account and you had Roth, you had traditional, called TSP, hey, I want $2,000. They're going to send you 1,000 from Roth and 1,000 from traditional. They're going to prorate and figure it out. That is the whole purpose. It defeats the purpose of why we set up the Roth in the first place. Okay? So again, what I think TSP realized is they need to give you guys more options. Because guess what? People are rolling out their funds through advisors, investment firms, because they have more options. Especially something as simple as this, right? Hey, you have a Roth, let's choose that when taxes are high. Hey, you have a traditional, well, taxes are low, let's use that now, okay? So again, that's one, and we'll get into the benefits of why would I want to leave this wonderful retirement plan I've had for my whole career. Why would I do that, Patrick? I like it. It's safe. It's used to it. It's my teddy bear that I cuddle at night. I know it. I can log into the system, and I've had my account set up, okay? The biggest reason people do it is options. That's just one small option that finally, at least the TSP kind of plugged that hole and gave you guys more mobility there. For fixed payments, you can choose to receive payments monthly, quarterly, or annually. You can start or stop the payments at any time throughout the year. Previously, if you had, for whatever reason, stopped a TSP payment, and then, so again, the old rules is if you were taking a payment, you stopped it. Once you stopped the check, they would send you your whole TSP balance, okay? I know, silly, stupid, but that's what it was, is once you stopped your installment check, they said, okay, great, get out of here, we don't want you anymore, okay? Another silly rule, they will no longer make you take out the remaining funds after you stop an installment payment. You can elect payments based on life expectancy, which that's really almost annuitizing your TSP. We'll get into that here shortly, the big A word, right, annuities, okay? You can choose to receive funds from your TSP. Traditional and or TSP as proportionate rule has been eliminated. I already gave you my soapbox on that as to why that was so silly, all right? So you will never be required to make a full withdrawal from TSP, all right, where they say, get the heck out of here for good. They'll never make you do that. So you're able to leave your funds in TSP after you attain age 72 as the requirement to leave was eliminated. You can also satisfy your RMDs through TSP or any other outside IRA, but just letting you know you're able to do that through TSP, okay? And then we have the A word, annuities, okay? Be careful with annuities. I've had plenty of clients come into my office and say, Patrick, I don't know why I got this annuity. It stinks, it sucks, it's horrible, it's miserable, okay? And usually the first thing that happens when people are angry with an annuity is because either one, they were misinformed on what they were getting, they got it for the wrong reasons, and my analogy for this is if you have a regular investment account, right, we'll call it like the C fund, and you have an annuity. This is the ice skate, this is the rollerblade. If you go to an ice hockey rink, all right, with an investment account, obviously the one with the ice skate is going to skate faster on the ice. The rollerblades are not going to skate as fast on ice, okay? Make sure that when you're signing up for an investment account, you understand the type of account you're receiving. Annuities are fantastic when done for the right reasons and the right person, right situation, all that sorts of elements, okay? When done for the wrong reason, yeah, you're going to be cursing either the person who gave it to you, your advisor's name under the sun, okay? Because they can be sticky situations. That's why I say caution. I'm putting up my big yellow flag sign, whatever it is, caution, okay? Specifically where annuities come into play is income, okay? Generating income. And prior to COVID, okay, key word, prior to COVID, they were a better portion, a better way to provide a higher income payout because it's based off fixed interest, it's based off of interest rates and actuarial science, okay? So, and traditionally you would think of a income withdrawal rate of anywhere between 4 and 5%. That's a healthy, sustainable withdrawal rate. So why people would gravitate towards annuities is because, again, prior to COVID, they could offer 6.5%, 6%, even 6, 7, 8% as far as a withdrawal rate, okay? So it allowed you to use less money to satisfy that, again, income goal. We talked about it yesterday, income, spousal protection. So that one goal, you were able to use less money and get a higher income payout, okay? Because they're interest rate sensitive, COVID, I will be honest, as we sit here right now, really ruined the withdrawal rate, the income payout that annuities, fixed income instruments can provide, okay? So they're saying, again, industry standard, usually between 4 and 5, they're now saying between 2.5% and 3% for this year, just because of how hard it is to provide guaranteed or consistent income with how interest rate sensitive things have been lately, okay? So that will change. I can tell you one thing, interest rates will not be at close to 0 forever. If they are, we got some serious issues going on, okay? So that's the first. So keep in mind that as you progress throughout your retirement career, annuities will probably come back into your picture. I have one client that she joked with me because she turned 65 and then all of a sudden she got all these phone calls. People, gold, silver, metals, everyone was calling her because they wanted her money essentially, all right? That's gonna happen to you guys. I don't know where this phone list is of wherever you come to a certain age, but people will start coming out of the woodworks, all right? I've seen it, it just happens. So that's why I'm cautioning you, and this term will be thrown around. I think of, he's not the face of it anymore for obvious reasons, but I always think of Ken Fisher. If anyone ever saw those commercials, annuities are bad, here's why, okay? They're not bad for everyone, all right? And that's the message I'm trying to say today, but you have to do your homework, understand the environment we're in, and make sure it fits for you. I actually give my clients the decision, and we call this transferring risk, right? An annuity is the transfer of risk. You have 2 decisions I give my client every single time. Would you like to have the risk of providing income being, hey, we're going to put it in a traditional investment account, it's going to do the dips and flows, we're going to take your income, but you're assuming the risk that, what we talk about at the beginning here, sequence of return, right? You're assuming that it's a possibility. I'm going to do my best. We're going to do our best to come up with the best plan. But at the end of the day, the market is its own beast, right? So there is a possibility. You have to be comfortable with the fact that you might run out of money. If we're not going to design, that's not going to be my plan. But again, anything could happen. So you're assuming the risk that I could potentially, have to take less money in retirement or essentially run out of money. Whereas an annuity transfers that income risk to the insurance company. Now they're going to take your money and they're going to invest it and they're going to try to turn, say, 100,000 into $1 million, all right? You don't care what happens with it because it's a contract written that we are going to pay you X amount for the rest of your life. You can see there's 18 different options. So depending on the option, right, the rest of your spouse's life, that sort of thing, okay? From that point on, you don't have any risk because guess what? The market tanks, you have a contract written and some of these insurance companies have so much reserves, you're not worried about your check being stopped. That's the point of the contract. So we call it, do you want something you can rely on, or do you want to take a little risk? And in the sense that this risk, you might have more of an account value, you might have more to leave to heirs, but you also could run out. So it's that balance of where do you find yourself as an investor. I'm not going to tell you, hey, you got to do an annuity, or you have to do a risky investment account. It's to the point where once the math works out, how do you feel about it? I mean, will you be lying awake at night, worrying about where your money's going to come from, or what's happened in the stock market, or how much can I pay myself this year because of all the conflicting factors? If that's you, then maybe you gravitate towards an annuity. Or if that doesn't worry you and you sleep like a baby at night, then maybe you can take on a little risk and assume that risk yourself. All right, but that's, again, where the annuity conversation, I think, gets lost sometimes, is people getting them for the wrong reasons or, unfortunately, being misinformed. So again, just remember, if you're going to get an ice skate or go to a roller rink, make sure you got the right pair of skates on. That's all. Okay? So these contracts are funded with a lump sum. And in return, they promise you a guaranteed monthly income stream. Guaranteed. Doesn't matter. Market drops to 0, you're still going to get your check. All right? They have single life, joint life, periods certain, and cash refund. All of these are going to have a different payout amount. Single life, it's just one person. So you can obviously guess that will have the highest payout amount, because what any insurance company hopes for when you have an annuity is you buy it, you start taking it, and you die as soon as possible. Okay? And this, at least in this example, because any other money that you haven't used, they get to keep. The home office gets to keep, all right? Joint life is obviously 2 lives. So myself, I die, my spouse receives the same pension for the rest of their life as well. Okay? Obviously going to pay you less of an income because now the actuarial science is based on 2 people. Again, the insurance company still wants you to die as quickly as possible, okay? Period certain, you have no, death doesn't change your circumstance. Period certain, it'll make sure that the dollar amount you put in or what you're owed is paid out over the period of that annuity, okay? And then cash refund, which is the way to make sure you get all your money back, is if you're taking part of payments, you die halfway through those payments, whatever money was not used goes back to beneficiaries, kids, grandkids, okay? So those are just the different types. All of these are available through your TSP. However, I will say, right before, we got so lucky with this, right before we were doing some work with a few clients, and in one cases, we were using an annuity right before the COVID situation happened, okay? And so when we do that, because we're a fiduciary and we have an in-home compliance office, every time we put a plan together, we have to go to the compliance office and say, hey, here's the plan for the client. We're humans make mistakes. Make sure we didn't overlook something, make sure there's not a better plan out there based on what we see, okay? And when we do that, we have to look at other companies, different rates, one of them being TSP, because that's an option right in front of you guys. TSP's annuity rates, you would almost do better putting that money in a bank account and pulling your money out, okay? That's how it is as we speak. 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe, TSP's rates couldn't be beat by anyone. I mean, it was like, we'll go check this out, but I already know where we're going, right? So it just kind of shows how quickly things have changed and why, if this becomes a part of your portfolio, go to the outside sector. At least get a quote, okay? Because what happens in the competitive marketplace, right? They're always battling for each other, especially now, okay? So yeah, just try to, compete companies against each other. But get a couple options, because you'll find there's companies that are willing to take on more risk, meaning they will think you'll live longer, so they'll pay you more than other companies will, okay? I don't think I have any questions there. So why would you use an income annuity, right? Transfer the risk, covered that. Create a dependable income stream, that's a preference. You can still have an income stream with a different type of account. It's just not truly dependable, right? Because there's a possibility something goes wrong somewhere. Again, I went over this. Oftentimes generates higher income. Okay, so I'm not going to dive too deep into that. So I do want to just walk through 2 techniques. We'll do the first one on this board. So split annuitization obviously is going to use some sort of annuity, okay? And again, these are just concepts. I'm not looking you in the eyes and saying, okay, Mr. Client, here's your money. You have $1 million in your TSP. Here's what we're going to do. Call me later, okay? No, that's not what we're doing. This is just a concept. So split annuitization. I'm going to assume that we have, just easy math here. Okay? So someone has $500,000 in their TSP, all right? Again, they've done the math. They figured out, okay, I need, again, I don't know what the rates are or anything like that, but I'm just going to use easy math. I need $250,000 to generate, let's say it's $3,000 a month, okay? Okay? So we've, again, reached out to a different couple of annuity companies. They say, okay, it'll take $250,000, and our bridge number is $3,000 a month, okay? So we realize, all right, $3,000 is what we need. We take a period certain for 10 years, okay? So again, $250,000, we roll it out of the TSP. You put it in a period certain 10-year annuity. Okay, so what's going to happen over this 10 years? It's going to pay you your $3,000, all right? We're living on, we're living our life, all right? However, we still have $250 hanging out here in TSP. And we've just realized our income was taken care of for 10 years, right? So what do we do with this $250? Well, we should invest it because we know we need growth. We know we need to keep up with inflation. So we come up with some sort of investment plan. I don't know, let's say it's 80-20 as far as stocks to, because it should be growth because we have 10 years, all right? What was the stat we saw for 10-year time horizon in the S&P 500? I think it was positive 94% of the time, right? So our chance of success here is pretty high, just based on statistics. So our goal is to invest this, stay invested in the market over the 10-year period. This is growing. Okay, I'm sorry, this is paying our income. This is growing during that 10-year period. At 7.2% return, which is the average, about the S&P 500 does about 7% a year. You will double your money in 10 years at a 7.2% return. It's a fact. You can check my math on that, all right? So in theory, what would be great is in 10 years, this 250 is now 500 again, okay? I'm aware that's not going to work like perfect all the time. But what also happened? Well, we took 10 years of income. Guess what? You didn't get 10 years younger over that time frame. We got 10 years older. This payout amount is based off of my life expectancy, actuarial science. If I got 10 years older during that time period, if this is the dollar amount I still need, it's going to take me less money to provide the same amount because I'm older now. I'm closer to dying. Insurance company wants that, all right? So in theory, let's say it didn't grow to 500. It was 400 because we didn't get exactly, okay? Exactly, the 7.2% we needed. And because we're 10 years later, maybe this only takes 150,000 to provide that same amount of income, okay? Now we can, of course, have 250,000 still left over in this pocket, and it kind of keeps going on in that direction. It's the first concept, which is called split annuitization. I would probably say your conservative approach, right? Someone that just, hey, I want to make sure my income is taken care of. Okay, we can do that. And maybe that's where some of this works into spousal protection, that sort of thing. Because obviously, we would have some money left over, okay? But that's the concept, is providing income, growing the rest, and replacing that income bucket, all right? Again, one of the more conservative approaches. The other is a bucket strategy, all right? I would say this is something we use more on a daily basis because it gives a couple more options. Like I said, that's more of a you could tell thank you. My mouth is like, and this is a bucket strategy. So same concept, 500,000 in our TSP. And in this case, yes, that's referred to annuity because we have to be able to predict how many years we'll be able to get X amount of dollars out. This doesn't have to be an annuity, okay? This doesn't have to, but it does need to be segmented towards income, spouse, growth, and maybe, I don't know, spend, play, whatever, okay? This is the ideal. But it's a way so that we don't keep all our money in one spot because we're only going to start dipping into all these different buckets when they should be itemized out for different purposes. So again, the first thing in retirement, the first thing everyone's here for, right, is, well, how much income am I going to have? How am I going to provide myself a retirement lifestyle? So that's always the first thing we need to take care of because, hate to break it to you, we can't take care of our spouse if we don't have any income, all right? So again, you figure out the math. Maybe it's not annuity. Maybe it's just a traditional investment account we take $3,000 a month from, all right? Again, this is loose math, guys, but let's say it's $200,000 that we put into that account. That provides our income. We talk with our spouse, and we realize, okay, our spouse only needs $100,000. Now, yesterday I talked about, would this really be an investment account? It could be. Or do we peel some of that off and buy a life insurance plan? So where, just as an example, maybe we take 10% of that every year, 10,000, I'm using a number here. So instead of this being a $100,000 bucket, it's really a $10,000 life insurance bucket that provides, I don't know, $500,000 of life insurance, something like that, okay? But again, we've segmented some portion of money for this specific purpose. And because, right, we need to keep up with inflation, because we have 15, 20, 30 years in retirement, we still need money itemized for growth to maybe replace this income bucket down the road or be our long-term care bucket. I don't know, okay? So we usually want to add some sort of, based on your time horizon, it would be risky, right? Something that's a little bit more risk, but it gives you, again, that growth potential that you need. So we could say that's, I don't know, 100,000. Okay? And then lastly, which we talked about yesterday, is because you've segmented, figure out your math, and put your TSP into separate buckets that are for specific purposes, you are able to identify what money is yours to actually use for yourself, to spend. Okay? That's the goal of financial planning, is to find and identify your money, the money you can enjoy, and that you don't have to put in these boxes, but actually push down to the final box, which is to spend. Okay? So again, I'm not going to go into what these accounts would be, but that's the concept of, if I'm trying to shake your branches of this common misconception, oh, I'm going to use my TSP and I'm going to live off that TSP and we're just going to let that ride. Okay? Because it can and will get you into trouble. And if anyone here likes being organized, okay, this is also a good way to organize yourself and say, okay, hey, because I have clients that, a much more prettier version of this, but we print out basically a flow chart that looks just like this. And people will have it, they've been clients for 10 years, still have that original flow chart because they're able to say, okay, yep, that's why we did this. They have their notes there, that's why we did this, okay? So it also keeps you, as you get older, right? One, we want you to be involved in your plan so that as you do get older and things aren't as quick to come around, right? You've been involved and you understand why you did things. And that comes from the educational side, okay? Is you want to educate your clients on what they're doing so that they can be involved, okay? But those are the two concept pieces that we use most commonly. And the most commonly you would see is the bucket approach, because as you can see, this could turn into 5, 6 buckets if you really wanted to, depending on your situation, all right? Or it could be as simple as 2. There's no limit, all right? Okay. So can you access this money before you retire? We did talk about that. Again, the year in which you turn 55, you're able to access the money, okay? Or an age-based and service withdrawal available to employees age 59 and a half. So where we see this used the most, and thankfully they've changed the rules. It used to be you're allowed one age-based and service withdrawal, period, one. So coming 59 and a half, you're still working at the government, and in some cases, maybe you're working with an advisor, you were forced more or less to kind of pull out a larger chunk than maybe you were comfortable with, because you could only do it once while you were in service and then once while you were out of service. Those were the old rules. Now they let you do that 4 times in 1 year. So I think that's good for you guys as a consumer, because, I don't know, maybe you're working with an advisor you never really met before. You like them on the outside, the personality, but you don't want to give them your whole TSP right off the bat. Maybe you want to test the waters, see how that goes, see how the advice goes, see how he's not just maybe there in front of your face while you're happy and goes away and you don't hear from him for 5 years, right? It allows you to do a trial run, okay? But what I think we can probably most agree on here is that the options inside the TSP are a little bit limited, all right? So it's good to at least explore, remember what I said yesterday, walking through those doors, explore your options, and take a couple meetings with people. Guess what? Just be in right back at the same spot you started, even if you don't like the information you have to hear, okay? That's why we say at the very beginning, any information you hear today, whether it's good or bad, is not a negative, it's not negative, okay? Because information is power and can be used in good circumstances, okay? Now, most income withdrawals, all of them actually have to be done online. One of the biggest changes, headache for us, but I'm happy it came into play because it protects you guys. I don't think it says it up there, but, well, the TSP 99 forms, the TSP 75 forms. So when you guys have to go in and make a withdrawal election, usually, if we're helping one of our clients out, we could actually go into TSP's website, print out these TSP 75 forms, which all we would need at that point is the client's TSP account number. We can write it in. So it allowed the financial firm to do more, which I think the client appreciated, because I don't know about you guys, have you pulled out your whole TSP funds before? It can be a little bit nerve-wracking, especially when you're pressing buttons you never pressed, okay? Currently, as we speak, that's how it has to be done. You, as the employee, have to go in, log into your TSP account, and make a withdrawal form. I can't do it. We actually couldn't even, obviously for security reasons, it's not like the client can give me their login information, so it has to be done by you, the employee, all right? So that's what's also pretty interesting in that regard, okay? is it's putting more responsibility on you guys, which is good because it protects you. It's making sure, hey, you're the one making this transaction, so you have to be aware of it. But again, it can be a little nerve-wracking. You can transfer your TSP upon retirement or age 59 and a half into a traditional or Roth IRA. That is not a taxable event, all right? And it's done very commonly to give people more access, especially if we're not just doing retirement planning, doing this stuff right here, but legacy planning, long-term care planning, okay? So they have more access because it allows you to look at your assets kind of holistically. And if you need to move bits and pieces of those assets to separate locations, different designations, you can do it a little bit more effectively because it's all under one investment firm roof, if that makes sense. Certainly gives you more control and definitely gives you more investment options because, like we said, TSP is a great accumulator. I love it. I love its ability to accumulate, but that's all it was built, and that's what any 401k, it's what my 401k was built to do, is accumulate. They were not designed to distribute. That's why we have all these other things, annuities, okay? If 401ks were built to distribute, then I would be up here talking about, hey, distribution techniques out of 401ks. You don't ever hear many advisors, any advisor that I know talk about that, okay? Because it's not built for that. It's built to set it, let it, forget it. There's different situations, sequence of return risk, that we don't worry about now while we're accumulating, that we need to worry about, that will be our biggest risk when we retire, okay? So you just want to give yourself the biggest fighting chance. And if things are going to continue to change, tax codes, laws, what have you, you might want to make sure you have the most options because it's the person with the most options that wins, not the most assets. And that's how we can start to maneuver our funds like the wealthy, because we have more options. All right. So the loan program, its general purpose is 5 years. Residential is 1 to 15 years. You need documentation required for that. You can take a maximum of up to $50,000. So again, I think the loan, where it fits, don't overextend yourself, but I think it is a tremendous plan that they have that allows you to borrow your own money, pay yourself back, okay? Again, do the math, make sure it's right. But in most cases, the interest on the TSP loans, and now interest rates are so low, so maybe it doesn't matter, but the interest on TSP loans were usually a better deal than any outside loan you could get as far as their rate, yeah.
The thing you have to remember with that, though, is the money that you borrow against is set off to the side and does not collect any interest whatsoever.
Yep.
Except for the interest that you are paying back.
Correct. Because why should they let you, if you're using it, right? You're using it, so it makes sense as far as the common sense there is, hey, if I'm using this money for my house or whatever, kitchen renovation, I hear a lot, they're not going to allow you to earn interest on money that's not in the account. So correct. And I forget how it looks on your statement, but it will reflect that. But it's something to be aware of. And it's definitely not something they're shouting at you saying, hey, guess what? Okay? I don't want to say there's a lot of hidden fees because there's no hidden fees, but there's hidden lack of information, if that makes sense. Stretching there. Okay. Spousal options. You may keep the TSP account in place or receive distributions. So if someone passes, of course you can, they could inherit the TSP account. Non-spousal beneficiaries are transferred into inherited IRAs. Okay, and then RMDs are an account value must be paid out within 10 years. That's new. That's a new rule. So if anyone inherits a RMD from a non-spouse, so your father, mother, brother, sister type situation, okay, it's what's called an inherited IRA, right? Because before it used to be, okay, let's say I inherited an IRA from my father, all right? Before it would be, okay, Patrick, your father was supposed to take out, RMDs at his age 70 based on this life expectancy, so we're going to require you start taking RMDs from that account based on your life expectancy, all right? Because the whole point of IRAs is the tax man needs to get his money. However, if it's an inherited IRA, what they have changed now, instead of, because in some cases people could be the same age as the person it was transferred over to them. If you inherit an IRA, that money has got to come through the tax sifter within 10 years. Okay, meaning if you have an IRA, you're going to take all that money out probably recycle it, right? We'll recycle it somewhere, but that's a requirement now that if you inherit a non-spousal IRA, you have got to maneuver it, okay, and pay the tax, essentially. Uncle Sam wants his money.
And then recycling would mean like put it back into a Roth.
Roth, non-qualified account, reinvest it, because I'm assuming if it's an inherited IRA, I mean, and maybe you need it for kitchen renovation. I've seen it all for inherited IRAs, right? Because it's kind of money you were not expecting, essentially. Recycling is putting it back to work for you. If you don't need it, if it's not going to go to a remodel of some sort in your home, then yeah, get it back to work. That's where you would have left it anyway. The only reason it's not staying where it's at is because of a silly little law that the government gave us. Okay.
Back to the TSP loan. So I heard earlier that if you have a loan, an outstanding loan when you retire, it just becomes a distributed event.
Correct.
So is that a pivot point then? If you're like, let's say you're 2 years out from retirement, and you took a loan, a TSP loan that has a 5-year payback, you basically then are accessing your
It is.
account without having to pay a 10% penalty, assuming the age and everything.
All that stuff, yeah. The only difference, right, is you're paying interest. Like, that's the only thing the only negative to that situation is you're paying interest on money you're borrowing. So that's it. But it could be a pivot play because it gets, for whatever.
I just looked it up last year, the interest rate on a TSP loan was 2.125%.
That was last year, pre-COVID, right. So that's like why I was saying it's usually.
Again, the low average rate for a house loan last year was 3 point something.
Which is why I have a lot of folks they'd be looking at their home equity loan, home equity line of credit, and they'd say, well, what the heck, I can do better at my TSP, so I'm just going to do that. So that happened a few times last year. But that's a good stat. We don't run into that too often, but that's my point. And I can tell you right now, because interest rates have dropped so low, it's probably even better than that. It's probably in the low 2s, okay? So again, just do your math. I know everyone, kitchen remodel, basement remodel, it's home equity loan or home equity line of, double check. Based on what we just heard, TSPs, their loan rates are pretty good, okay? Just make sure that if you don't want to get taxed on that money, you pay it back before you retire, okay? Because otherwise they will count as a distribution, all right? So this is the Secure Act that came out in 2019.
Real quick. If
Yes,
the
yeah.
inherited IRA is a Roth IRA, you don't have tax.
Nope, no tax, nope, yep. Yep. So what they did with the Secure Act is, and I always try to think of a rule of application as to why this happened. I think it has to do with us living longer, but RMDs used to be 70 and a half. You turn 70 and a half, you're required to take money out. They have now changed that to 72. Okay, so you have 2 more years basically until you need to, are required by the government to take your money out of your TSP IRA. New RMD rules for payments to beneficiaries. The beneficiary must withdraw all assets from the inherited. I already went over that. I hate repeating myself. Okay. Exception to the rules: a surviving spouse. You don't have to take. It doesn't have to be 10 years. Disabled or chronically ill individual, minor children, individuals not more than 10 years younger than the IRA owner. And these changes generally apply to deaths after 2019. Inherited IRAs or defined contribution plans in 2019 or before are grandfathered in and do not need to be changed. So if essentially you've received an inherited IRA prior to 2020, this rule does not apply to you. You're based on the old rules, okay? Which personally, I can't say what rule's better than the other. I think they both have their ups and downs, all right? Participants are allowed to withdraw of up to $5,000 per birth or adoption from certain employer-sponsored plans, traditional IRAs, allowed for a 1-year time period following that birth or adoption. So I don't know if you knew that, but you have a kid, okay, or adopt a kid, you can get money out without the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Individuals who contribute to traditional IRAs until attaining age 72, those individuals are required to meet all IRS criteria for making a contribution as far as earned income. They have to earn income to make a contribution. And this is applicable to contributions and starting in the year 2020, okay? So I'm sure Chris definitely already, did he mention about the crazy situation we had with the beneficiaries and the wife? Yeah, okay. That's why I wasn't going to go into it, but it is, that happened one of the very first years I was there, and it was kind of like that moment of my career. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. It's just why I want to make sure moving forward we never have that happen again, okay? So please, wills are not recognized. If a beneficiary or there's a beneficiary designation, they are going to look at that all day, every day. It doesn't matter what the will says, all right? So people always ask me, Patrick, I don't have my will yet. It's like, I don't care. If you have a beneficiary, you really don't need a will. As long as you have a beneficiary designation, what do you need a will for? Sure, your house, right? Those hard assets. You know, Johnny and Jill should have half of the house. They should have my, the grandma's, wedding ring, right? Those type of things. Yes, there needs to be a will because it's a hard asset. All right, you can't put a beneficiary form for your, great grandmother's wedding ring. All right. But anything else, investment account, TSP account, or life insurance, please, 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 please have a beneficiary down. All right. That beneficiaries are the easiest and most efficient way to pass down assets. Hey, I have to give this money to what it says on this account. Okay, boom, left pocket, right pocket. Or legal order of precedence, which gets sticky. All right. So inheriting a TSP, and this is one reason why we try to get folks out of the TSP to set up a retirement plan, is it could just be inefficient. Because when folks inherit a TSP, and a lot of times we try to educate our clients on, if you're trying to leave money behind, if you're trying to leave a legacy, make sure you account for taxes. I mean, if your goal is to leave your kids $1 million each, hey, if you account for taxes, they might only end up with $700, all right? So make sure you're accounting for the taxable consequence. In this case, right, heirs are going to receive a TSP investment. Let's say there's 3 kids, right? It's going to be split out amongst them. But now they're required, because it's a non-spousal RMD, to take that money out within 10 years and pay taxes on it within 10 years. What if that 10 years, it's a really high tax environment, but they're forced to take the money out, right? So it can be an inefficient way to transfer assets down. However, and this is a pivot play, again, you're going to see that fun word called life insurance again, because it's the most efficient way to pass down assets. And I can use, heck, even the investment income from my assets to fund that. So maybe we don't need to give ourselves $1 million policy. Maybe we do leave money left over in our TSP for our kids, but maybe the life insurance policy picks up the difference between what the taxable consequence will be. So that, if we want to leave our kids $1 million, then we have like a $300,000 policy to make up what happens when taxes hit, okay? Or ideally, we use life insurance for the whole thing because it's tax-free where they get it. Again, it comes down to your health. I always say Joe Schmo can walk off the street and get an investment account. Joe Schmo cannot walk off the street and get a life insurance account. You got to height, weight, blood, all that stuff. It's like check your health. But that is one very big, influential way to provide assets to your family and pass them down in efficient pivot play manner, okay? A few other retirement vehicles. We have a traditional IRA, which is essentially what you would roll your TSP into in retirement and become a traditional IRA at that point. It is a tax-qualified investment vehicle, and you can contribute $6,000 a year annually into that with a $1,000 catch-up at age 50. They are tax deductible. And again, the registration type is identical to what the TSP is, as far as the registration type is. However, you notice you can only put $6,000 in there. TSP, you can do up to almost $20,000 with another $6,500 if you're over 50. But why people do traditional IRAs, right, is in a private traditional IRA, you can get more options. You can actually pick stocks, right? You can buy some Tesla stock or something like that, all right? Distributions from traditional IRAs are taxed as normal income. You can transfer your TSP into these accounts, all right? Non-taxable event, and we talked about the control, the more access, the investment choices you get with that. Roth IRA is the same way, all right? Now there's one thing I didn't touch on here quickly on the Roth TSP portion, is notice, look, you contribute $6,000 to a Roth IRA, all right? So great, me as a private sector person, I can put $6,000 into my Roth IRA, okay? However, you guys have a TSP account. And you can actually put 100% of your savings into the Roth TSP. So as you sit here, you folks actually have the ability within the Roth TSP to put almost $20,000 a year into a Roth portion. Okay? So keep that in mind as you're still working. If your goal is to save into the Roth, it might not make sense for you to do it in a separate outside plan while you're working. It might make sense because you can do more in the Roth TSP. On top of that, you will only get matches put into your traditional TSP balance. So if you, let's just say you start out at the government and you have never put a single dollar into the traditional TSP. So from the day you started, you put 100% of your proceeds into the Roth TSP. When you retire, you will end up with a traditional balance because the government does not want to pay taxes for you. So when they match their 5% contribution, they're putting in the traditional side because they don't want to pay taxes earlier than they're supposed to. You guys chose to do that. That's on you. They're going to put that in the traditional side, okay? Because I know I have some clients that after taking this class, sometimes that small caveat misses them and they go in and sign up for Roth and they call me a few weeks later and they go, I'm missing the match, man. Why did you tell me to do that? I said, no, you're not. It's just going to the traditional side. So they're never going to match your Roth. They will always move those funds to the traditional because it defers the taxes for the government, okay? But again, keep that in mind. You can put almost $20,000 into a Roth TSP if you want. Taxes are cheap. Just saying. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you some information about the landscape. Again, same thing as a traditional IRA, okay? All right, now we have to do this group exercise until about 5 o'clock, and then everyone can leave. All right. Now, this is just, we put this in here when I was talking about my Tesla story. This is what I should have had right in front of me before I made that, click that sell button, was have an investment policy statement. Have a system in place to know when to make allocation changes or depend on emotions. So really, I should have wrote, hey, man, don't open this until you retire, or at least don't touch this for 10 years, okay? I should have written that down. I should have said that to myself, put it in a folder. Next time I thought about buying more or selling, I should have read that statement. So I think we have a copy in your folders somewhere of just a sample of this account is for XYZ. The reason being is this is just a little bit of study of people. If you write something down, you give yourself a finish line, so to speak. It's a hard, factual, something you can hold on to. You're more likely to achieve it or actually complete it, okay? That's just the psychology behind it. And then lastly here, we'll do a little bit of estate planning. So the best practice is to have an organized and effective strategy when it comes to distributing wealth, okay? Now we talked about beneficiaries, and beneficiary designation forms are the best way to distribute wealth efficiently. But we also have joint ownership. So when 2 or more people often hold joint ownership of property, this can include real estate, business, bank accounts, stock, okay? However, there are 2 types of joint ownership. Some avoid probate and others do not. We have joint tenancy with rights of survivorship, okay? This type of ownership does avoid probate. However, when there are 2 or more people own property, and let's say they're as a joint account, the deceased owner's interest gets transferred to the remaining owner's account, okay? And so, and this is, you're looking at, the most common is like businesses, again, hard assets if you have rental income or rental properties. This is where folks, when they put that election in, can sometimes disinherit a side of the family because it goes to the remaining partner. I'll call him a partner. I think of a business partner every time I see this, but, and so, to avoid those interests being combined to the remaining partner, okay, we can have tenants in common, all right? When 2 or more people own a property as tenants in common, deceased ownership is not automatically inherited by the others. It is rather included in the deceased person's estate, okay? So again, from a business perspective, let's just say me and Chris, I wish, me and Chris own the teaching company 50-50, okay? In the case that I were to pass, all right, in tenants in common, my kids, grandkids would be entitled to the business compensation or 50% of whatever that's worth, okay? In joint ownership, my 50% share gets transferred to Chris. And he's a good guy. I know he would do what's right, but he doesn't have to, okay? So that's just, again, to protect yourself, tenants in common is probably the more safe route to go, unless you really trust the person you're working with, right? Direct transfer of assets, beneficiary forms, by far are obsolete compared to any other way to transfer assets. I think I've said that a million times just today, so I think you guys have gotten that point. You can put them on insurance policies, annuities, Roth IRA, IRAs, and 401k accounts, okay? And double check contingent beneficiary. I did have someone come up to me and say, hey, I want to put primaries down, and there's also contingent. So God forbid something happens to you and your spouse at the same time. If there's no contingent listed, guess what? All that money is now going to the estate, which is going to be subject to probate, all that yucky stuff, all right? So you usually, and part of my requirement when a client becomes a client is we're filling out, obviously, all the information, primary beneficiary. Patrick, I don't know a contingent beneficiary. Well, that's great. We can't do this until you figure that out, okay? Because I could be the worst steward of your money. I can't choose when someone's going to die. So if I don't have that written down, God forbid, the worst case scenario happens, I feel like I was a bad steward at that point, bad fiduciary. So, and I know in some cases it's hard to think of like, well, for me and my spouse, I don't trust my brother. I don't want him to get, and so I know some people got to think, right, of some people, okay? But that's one of my rules is you got to have a contingent beneficiary because life is too short and, be honest, stuff happens, right? So I'm sure we can all admit to that. Payable on death accounts is just a type of registration where you can put a single beneficiary down and the ownership transfers directly to that person upon death, and it does avoid probate. This is bank accounts, CDs, mutual funds, brokerage accounts. And again, direct transfer, the point of a direct transfer is to avoid probate. It's not available for all asset types. And problems can occur if there's minor children listed, that sort of thing. All right. So, to summarize, understand, most importantly, what type of investor you are, because that's going to allow you to pick the risk, not the risk that you want to achieve, okay? And also stand your timeline to achieve that risk. And I would say the biggest thing to take away from these bucket approaches, right, is understand that there's always some portion of your money that's going to be geared towards growth, okay? But solve the important things, income and spouse, first, okay? Come to those conclusions first. Need budget versus want, we do that at the beginning because guess what? You can't get to here without figuring out what you need. The want would be nice, right? I already hear the ESPN updates. NFL's on tonight, all right? The needs are important, and then you can move on to the wants, okay? I can't promise you're going to get everything you want. Like, you can't. But that's how we start to come up with the blueprint, and that's where we get into designing a blueprint to achieve these goals. Okay, this is the goal I need. How am I going to get there? Does that mean I don't have enough yet, so I got to work another 2-3 years longer than I'm supposed to? I don't know. But I also know to figure out, maybe need, want, design a blueprint, is there someone standing right in front of you that's going to be allowing you to figure that out, okay? You're all entitled to that free report that goes through needs, wants, design a blueprint, okay? Come up with my number. Everyone that's sitting in this room know their number? You guys know your number, what you need to retire on? I wish I would have asked that yesterday when this was full because I'd be willing to guess that maybe some of you do, but probably half of you don't. There we go. At least that's an answer. So I challenge all of you after going to this class to know your number. And it's going to change. I mean, some of you might be 5-10 years away. It's okay. We call that landing the plane, making sure you're prepared for retirement. But if you don't know your number today, when are you going to find it out? You're going to wait until the last year? All right? Some number is better than the most accurate number a month before retirement. All right? Lastly, be tax efficient. All right? That's going to be a big, and usually a big question is, folks, is how do I want to pay less in taxes? I know Chris talks about Warren Buffett, right? And he makes fun of his secretary who pays more in taxes than he does, okay? The goal is, I would argue, is that we don't want to pay more taxes than we need to, okay? And that comes down to efficient dollars, making sure your dollars are working as hard as they can for you at the right places. The comparison of the gas tax, Jersey to Pennsylvania, right? They don't have better gas here because it's more expensive, all right? the same gas, we run on the same stuff. You want to be able to allow your dollars that if something's cheaper somewhere but gets you the same benefit, that's where you want your money to go. The path of least resistance, the most efficient. All right? Other than that, I think this is the end. Okay. So I know some people had to get out, obviously. It's like crickets in here now. But I am collecting the eval forms here. I'll put them front and center, I guess, up here. Again, not to kill your brains with this, if you fill it out and put your contact information down, we're going to call you and ask to sit down for a free analysis report. Okay? Give you your numbers, your needs, your wants, your potential exponential growth and what your TSP could look like by the time you retire. Okay? If you do not want a call or do not want the free report, please just hand this in and circle all 5s, and that's all we'll need. Okay? But if you don't want the report, do not put your contact down. Okay? I get people think, Patrick, why are you calling me? Well, you put the contact information down. I thought you wanted a call. Okay? Other than that, thank you for being my first class in person again. I hope this continues moving forward, because trust me, I loved it a lot more than Zoom class. Other than that, guys, free to go. Thank you. Very much thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely, thank you.
The other designations, but I'm only allowed, I